This is Mission Control Houston, and there we are now getting a view of the shuttle aircraft carrier with Endeavour right there in the center view here, just coming across Ellington. This is Mission Control Houston. We are now getting live view of the space shuttle carrier, aircraft carrier, with Endeavour strapped to the top, with its fly over Ellington Field here in the Houston area. Houston is on its first leg of its road trip to California. The aircraft with Endeavour will land at Ellington Field this morning and will stay overnight before departing at dawn on Thursday to make to begin its second leg of its road trip to California.
Me too. Where'd it go?
Take one hot. 350 trial shot. Get it more to your right, to your right.
This is Mission Control Houston again. We're getting live footage of the space shuttle aircraft carrier with Endeavour strapped to its top for its final ferry flight. Endeavour is making its final flight piggyback atop that shuttle aircraft carrier, a 747, on a cross-country ferry flight to the California Science Center in Los Angeles. Endeavour has now made its way to Houston with a low flyover. Various landmarks here in Houston and the Clear Lake area. It was just spotted with a low flyover at Ellington Field, where folks had gathered to spot the shuttle. Endeavour is the youngest orbiter of the space shuttle fleet. It had ended its service with 25 missions. The last was a 14-day flight to the International Space Station, designated as STS-134, that had delivered the Alpha Magnetic Spectrometer. is Mission Control Houston. Again, we are looking at live footage of the Endeavour strapped to the Space Shuttle aircraft carrier as it makes its low flyover across Houston and the Clear Lake area. Joining us on the phone now is the last person ever to fly Endeavour and safely land the orbiter after a 15-day mission to the International Space Station as commander of STS-134, the second to final Space Shuttle flight. Retired NASA astronaut Mark Kelly.
Good morning, Amiko. How are you?
Good morning, Mark. Thank you for joining us here today.
Yeah, no problem.
Well, it's a bittersweet day for folks here at NASA and even for the American public as we watch the youngest of the Space Shuttle fleet make its final flight to its eventual final wheel stop. The Space Shuttle has proven an extraordinary capability that did its job and then some. Mark, you flew to space 4 times aboard the Space Shuttle, twice aboard Endeavour and also twice aboard Discovery.
Yeah, I did. Yeah, I flew Endeavour on my first flight in 2001, and then again last year on its final flight to space. I think Endeavour went into space, 25 times. So it was certainly, one of the highlights of my astronaut career to have the opportunity to fly that final flight.
And I can only imagine. So your first flight was aboard Endeavour during STS-108. It was the final shuttle mission of 2001 that lifted off on December 5th that year. Can you tell me a little about that first flight experience?
Yeah, we brought up an MPLM. It was STS-108. The MPLM is, the logistics module that gets attached to the station, unloaded, and then reloaded with cargo. We also did a crew transfer. So 3 crew members went up with us, and 3 more went down. In total, we flew 3 cosmonauts on that flight, 1 up and 2 back. And it was my first time in space, so it was really exciting time in my life to have the opportunity to do that. Not many people get the opportunity to fly in space, so it's something all of us astronauts really appreciate and cherish.
Great, and I understand there were a couple of delays on that flight.
There are always delays. It's part of the business. It's very, very rare that we go on time. I think I did once, 1 out of my 4 flights. So it's an expected thing. We don't get too excited about it. I think the biggest downside for the crew members is just thinking about all the guests and people that have come to Florida to watch this wonderful spaceship launch into space and then not get the opportunity. But it's something we all expect. Just like Endeavour trying to fly to California with the weather issues that they experienced, but it's now on its way. I'm hoping maybe it'll fly over Tucson on its way to LA here over the next couple days.
Right, that would be great. Well, they say space flight is a sport, and apparently flight in general is a sport as well.
Yeah, it is. It certainly has some of the elements of unpredictability and excitement about it. And I think a lot of people, especially in the Clear Lake area, are really excited today to see Endeavour fly over. I've only seen Endeavour I've only seen a space shuttle on top of the SCA on 1 occasion. And I think it wasn't, I'm not sure exactly, but Endeavour, Discovery, or Atlantis came over Houston several years ago on its way back from Edwards, and it was something. It's a sight to see.
Absolutely, I think this is the first time I've seen it. And again, SCA is the shuttle carrier aircraft that is carrying Endeavour on top of that.
Yeah, it is. It's it's an amazing feat, to stick something that heavy, 195,000 pounds, on top of another airplane, successfully get it in the air. Obviously with that amount of weight and drag, that airplane cannot go as far. That's why they stop. Usually at least once, maybe a couple times going across the country. That airplane burns a lot of gas with the space shuttle on top.
I'll bet. So let's get back to, obviously, the space flight. And we interrupted today's show, the ISS update, where we are normally talking about space station, but obviously Space Shuttle relates to that, as Space Shuttle was integral to the construction of the space station. So I want to talk about that first flight. You were talking about the multi-purpose logistics module. We also call that Raffaello. In fact, on that mission, you worked the shuttle's robotic arm to lift that module out of the Endeavour's payload bay and berth it to the space station. Can you tell me a little about that experience?
Well, I could try. I could barely remember it. It was 10 years ago, but with those MPLMs or any module, I mean, you use initially, like in our case, we used the space shuttle arm to pull it out of the payload bay. This was before the space station had its own robotic arm. And, just very carefully attach it to in our case, we attached it to the bottom of Node 1. And then it takes a little while to get the hatches open and, we pull out of the cargo out, and over a week-long period, unload it and reload it with stuff and button it all up and put it back into the payload bay. Again, very carefully. That arm moves, it moves pretty quick, but you try to be really careful with it. So we don't want to damage anything, or worse than that, even hurt anybody. So we're very careful about it. We put it back in, and that was an early space station assembly flight. I can't, really hard for me to say. I mean, hundreds and hundreds of times those robotic arms, the shuttle and the station arm, have been used to construct this amazing facility that we have in space.
Yeah, now you flew both Endeavour and Discovery, and despite the updates that Endeavour had from Discovery, I understand any differences between the two orbiters aren't exactly detectable from the inside, but the Space Shuttle is, revered as an unprecedented space-flying machine. So talk to me a little about the muscle behind the machine, the Space Shuttle system, and its overall capacity.
Well, the interesting thing is, on the launch pad, when the Space Shuttle is fully fueled, it weighs about 4 million pounds. But the thing that we're trying to get into space, which is the orbiter, empty, weighs about 195,000 pounds. So the rest of it is basically fuel and propulsion system. So you need more than 4 million pounds of fuel and propulsion system to get that space shuttle moving, from 0 to 17,500 miles an hour in just 8.5 minutes. I mean, it's an incredible feat. When you look at just the sheer difference in size between something like the Space Shuttle and the Soyuz, it's quite impressive. And, it's certainly the most amazing spacecraft that people have ever designed. At least I think it is. And, hopefully one day we'll get back to having a reusable winged vehicle. But in the meantime, we need to build something that is, hopefully much safer and less expensive, and that's the road we are currently on with the commercial crew program for people.
Right, thank you. Well, listen, let's fast forward a decade from that first flight and 3 space flights under your belt to Endeavour's final flight. Also, your final space flight. It was your second assignment to serve as commander of a space shuttle. During your training and leading up to flight, your wife, then U.S. Congresswoman Gabrielle Giffords, was shot after an attempted assassination on that terrible and unforgettable day back on January 8, 2011. As your wife recovered, together you both made the decision to stay the course and fly. And it was obviously a sound decision, as you commanded the mission with the utmost professionalism, leadership, precision, and skill that I have ever seen. Tell me about your final flight experience aboard Endeavour, that also delivered the alpha magnetic spectrometer to the space station, and the significance of that final flight.
Well, thanks for the compliment there, Miko. It was a tough time, for Gabby, and certainly for Gabby. I mean, she was in the hospital during that entire period from January 8th until well into June, after I landed. And the decision for me to go back and fly that flight was a difficult one. I'd been training with my crew members for about a year and a half at that point. So it certainly made sense, for me to fly the flight. We temporarily had a backup commander in C.J. Sturkow, was a very capable guy.